In the vast expanse of the galaxy, humans held a reputation that had been carefully built over centuries. They were known as diplomats, the mediators of interstellar disputes, the ones who would find common ground when tensions threatened to erupt. This role wasn't born out of weakness but a deep-rooted belief that cooperation was the key to survival. Humanity had seen its own share of struggles on Earth: wars, climate crises, and societal upheavals. Through these challenges, they had cultivated a resilience and patience that earned them admiration and, perhaps, quiet envy from other species. This approach to peace, however, often invited the wrong kind of attention. Species across the galaxy began to assume that humans could always be reasoned with, that they would bend before they would break. This perception led to a quiet erosion of respect. While other species enjoyed humanity's peacekeeping efforts, they began to treat these actions as expected rather than earned. Minor transgressions went unchecked as humans took the higher path, letting insults or minor skirmishes slide for the sake of maintaining harmony. When small acts of aggression against human outposts or trade routes began occurring, humans addressed them diplomatically, sending warnings instead of retaliating with force. Other species saw this as further proof that humans value peace above all else, even when faced with provocation. Over time, these provocations escalated. Humans would intervene in conflicts, spending resources to protect weaker allies, only for these allies to show little gratitude. Some would even align with rival factions shortly after receiving human aid, seeing no obligation to remain loyal. Other species watched humanity's patience with a mix of bemusement and exploitation, quietly testing the boundaries to see just how far the humans would allow themselves to be pushed. Humanity's compassion was becoming a liability, as species learned they could take advantage without facing repercussions. In one incident, a human peacekeeping mission resolved a dispute on a distant world, ending a conflict that had raged for decades. Yet, the two species involved quickly resumed hostilities, each accusing the humans of bias in the peace accords. Rather than acknowledging humanity's role in restoring temporary order, they blamed them for their own inability to coexist. These accusations were mere words, but they stung deeply. Humans took on these roles not out of pride but a sense of responsibility, and being blamed for failures they had no hand in caused frustration to brew just beneath the surface. Each instance added a layer of pressure, a slow accumulation of frustrations and disappointments that simmered quietly across human worlds and colonies. There was a growing feeling among the public that humanity was being taken for granted, that their contributions were undervalued. Political leaders heard the discontent in their constituencies, sensing that their people were reaching a breaking point. Yet they continued their diplomatic path, hoping that continued goodwill would lead to eventual respect. Despite these efforts, a new attitude began to take shape among the human populace, a desire for respect over peace, for recognition over appeasement. Then came a series of coordinated attacks on human trade routes, causing economic turmoil and leading to the deaths of innocent civilians. Investigations revealed that several species, whom humanity had once considered allies, were behind these attacks. Despite the mounting evidence, these allies denied any involvement, even mocking humanity's need for proof and civility in the face of betrayal. The human government once again tried to address the situation diplomatically, issuing ultimatums, demanding investigations, and urging those involved to take responsibility. The responses were cold, dismissive, and at times outright taunting. These incidents were the last straw for many humans. Across planets and stations, people began speaking openly about the need for a shift in humanity's stance. Resentment grew as humans realized that their patience had not only failed to earn respect but had actually encouraged others to disregard their boundaries. Ordinary citizens expressed anger and disillusionment, calling for a new era where humanity would no longer tolerate being treated as the galaxy's negotiator or caretaker. The shift was slow but undeniable. Across human worlds, people voiced their frustrations through protests, petitions, and public outcry. Leaders could no longer ignore the collective sentiment that their people felt betrayed, not only by former allies but by their own leadership's unwillingness to respond decisively. Politicians and diplomats were forced to confront the possibility that humanity's role in the galaxy had to change. There was a growing realization that while peace was an ideal worth striving for, it could not come at the cost of humanity's dignity or security. Discussions took place behind closed doors, as human leaders weighed the cost of continuing their diplomatic stance versus taking a firmer approach. The public's patience was wearing thin, and so was that of the leaders themselves. For generations, humanity had made sacrifices in the hope of forging a stable, united galaxy, but it was now clear that many species were more interested in exploiting human kindness than embracing it. The galaxy saw humans as peacekeepers, but humans were beginning to see themselves as something else entirely, as a force that, if provoked, could be as fierce as any other species. The breaking point arrived with a betrayal that sent shockwaves through human society. An allied species, one that humanity had supported during countless conflicts and crises, turned on them in an unprovoked attack. A peaceful human colony, defenseless and dedicated to scientific research, became the target. The assault was swift and brutal, leaving no survivors. News of the massacre spread rapidly, and the galaxy watched as humanity processed the attack. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a deliberate act of violence against a peaceful community that had posed no threat. It became a grim symbol of all that humanity had endured in the name of cooperation and peace, an open wound that cut deep into the collective psyche. For generations, humans had sacrificed to build alliances, dedicating their resources to protect others and striving to maintain unity across diverse species. They had worked tirelessly, believing that their goodwill and resilience would eventually earn them respect and reciprocity. But now, as they mourned the senseless loss of lives, that belief shattered. The betrayal exposed the harsh truth: their restraint had not earned respect. Instead, it had emboldened others to disregard humanity's boundaries, seeing their patience as a weakness rather than a strength. Humanity's initial shock transformed into outrage, a fierce anger that resonated across every human colony, space station, and planet. They had been pushed too far, and the cost was irreversible. Human leaders, who had long held on to the ideals of diplomacy and understanding, faced intense pressure from their people to respond decisively. In public forums and political arenas, voices once advocating for patience now demanded justice. The call for action was universal, spanning all ranks and regions. The people no longer wanted promises of security or empty assurances. They wanted proof that humanity's losses would not go unanswered. The betrayal had ignited a fierce determination to reclaim their dignity and demand accountability from those who had wronged them. Leaders who once prided themselves on peaceful resolution found themselves standing on the precipice of a new era, one where their people demanded retribution. Despite efforts to deny and downplay the attack, the allied species responsible made a critical mistake. In response to humanity's accusations, they dismissed the colony's destruction as an unfortunate but necessary action, claiming it had been strategic to prevent potential threats to their own interests. This casual dismissal of human lives, paired with their lack of remorse, added fuel to the fire already burning across human worlds. It was as though they viewed humans as expendable, unworthy of consideration or respect. The cold, indifferent response stripped away any lingering doubts within humanity. Their patience, which had once been a source of pride, was now seen as a liability that had cost them dearly. The betrayal and subsequent dismissal of human lives became a defining moment in galactic history. Humanity's collective grief and rage unified them in a way that centuries of diplomacy had not. The weight of countless past insults and betrayals merged with the fresh wound inflicted by the colony's destruction, and together they created a wave of resolve that surged across human society. In a single, powerful shift, humanity's stance on peace transformed. They would no longer plead for respect, they would demand it. The realization swept through every corner of human society. If the galaxy saw their patience as weakness, they would show them what strength looked like. The demands for change were swift and uncompromising. Human military leaders, once sidelined in favor of diplomats, were now at the forefront, tasked with crafting a response that would ensure no species would ever take humanity for granted again. Strategists and tacticians, once focused on defense and mediation, now considered how to strike back in a way that would make their message undeniable. Humanity's response would be a statement, a demonstration of power that would echo across the stars. They were done with discussions, tired of compromises that cost them more than they gained. Their resolve was absolute. They would send a message that no one would ever forget. The galaxy, sensing the shift, began to watch with a growing unease. Species who had once mocked human patience now questioned the wisdom of their actions. The species responsible for the attack, however, underestimated the depth of humanity's resolve. They continued to defend their actions, believing that humans, as always, would settle for a diplomatic outcome. But humanity was done negotiating. The loss of innocent lives, the disregard for their sacrifices, and the years of being treated as lesser had culminated in an unyielding determination to assert their place in the galaxy. The days of tolerance were over. Humanity's message was clear. They would no longer be the galaxy's silent peacemakers, bearing the cost of unity without reward. Humanity's leadership, sensing the urgency, unified across planets and systems in a way that was unprecedented. Political rivalries and ideological differences dissolved as humans from every background stood united in their purpose. They would show the galaxy that humanity's strength was not limited to patience and diplomacy. The alliance that had betrayed them would see firsthand that the humans they had dismissed as weak and soft were capable of unrelenting action. For the first time in centuries, humans prepared for war, not because they wanted it, but because they had no other choice. This wasn't about conquest or revenge. It was about ensuring that no species would ever forget the day humanity decided to fight back. As humanity rallied, they did so with the knowledge that this would change their place in the galaxy forever. Their reputation as mediators would be replaced by one of power and resilience. They would not be remembered as a species that bent to others' will, but one that defended its dignity and honored its people. The betrayal had transformed them, turning grief into purpose, patience into strength, and tolerance into an unwavering resolve. From that moment on, humanity would not ask for respect. They would command it. The galaxy had taken humanity's kindness for granted one time too many, and now, they would witness what it meant for humans to reach their breaking point. Humanity's response was swift and resolute, shattering the expectations of the galaxy. Where they had once relied on diplomacy and restraint, they now unleashed the full force of their capabilities with unrelenting precision. The same ingenuity and determination that had driven humans to explore the stars and build alliances now fueled a calculated retaliation. Military fleets mobilized with an efficiency that took their enemies by surprise. No more messages, no more warnings, only action. Humanity reclaimed the systems that had been violated and moved with an uncompromising intent, targeting the forces of those who had wronged them. As humanity's fleets entered enemy territories, the galaxy watched, transfixed. The shift from peacemakers to warriors was unlike anything they had seen. Humans, who had been dismissed as passive and yielding, demonstrated an organization and coordination that left no margin for error. Their technology, once viewed as merely utilitarian, now proved formidable, revealing advancements that had been underestimated by those who saw them as mere mediators. Humanity struck strategically, neutralizing threats with surgical precision and reclaiming their territories with a relentless focus. Each engagement sent a clear message: humanity was no longer willing to tolerate betrayal or disrespect. The swiftness of their actions shocked even their former allies, who had grown accustomed to human patience. Now they saw firsthand the depth of human resilience when directed toward defense, not diplomacy. Every battle, every reclamation was carried out with a cold, unyielding efficiency. Human forces operated with a discipline that left no room for resistance, overwhelming their opponents with the sheer weight of their resolve. The galaxy, witnessing this new side of humanity, began to grasp the reality of the strength that had long been masked by diplomacy and restraint. In the midst of humanity's advance, the species responsible for the betrayal scrambled to defend themselves. They had not anticipated such a severe backlash, having counted on humanity's previous unwillingness to escalate conflicts. However, their assumptions were shattered as humans broke through their defenses, dismantling their fleets and fortifications without hesitation. The betrayed allies found themselves overwhelmed, facing a force they had sorely underestimated. Humanity's actions were not driven by rage alone but by a calculated strategy, a determination to ensure their message was not only heard but felt across the galaxy. Human forces made their stance clear with each victory. They were reclaiming not only their territories but their place in the galactic order. Those who had once viewed humanity as a tool for maintaining peace now saw them as a power to be reckoned with. The galaxy had thought humanity's strength lay solely in their words, but now they understood that it extended far beyond diplomacy. The humans were proving that their kindness and patience had been choices, not limitations, and that they could act decisively when those choices were no longer respected. The defeated species, now faced with the reality of their miscalculation, pleaded for negotiations. They offered reparations, promising peace, but humanity did not relent. The demands for justice from within human society had grown too strong, and their leaders were resolute in honoring that call. Humanity's leaders, once so quick to negotiate, rejected offers of appeasement, making it clear that the only acceptable outcome was full accountability. Every incursion, every act of betrayal would be met with a proportionate response, leaving no room for compromise. The galaxy observed, understanding that humanity's breaking point had forged them into something unrecognizable. Humanity's resolve extended beyond the battlefield. Their refusal to accept apologies or concessions showed a strength of conviction that was as formidable as their military power. This response was about more than reclaiming lost territory. It was a reassertion of their place in the galaxy. The humans were setting a new precedent, one that declared they would not be disrespected, exploited, or taken for granted again. Their actions were a declaration to the entire galaxy. Humanity had evolved, and they would no longer tolerate those who failed to acknowledge their strength and dignity. In the aftermath of each victory, humanity left behind a reminder of their new stance. Outposts were established, defenses fortified, and alliances redefined. This wasn't merely a return to the status quo but a restructuring of the galactic landscape. Species that had once dismissed humanity as a peaceful intermediary now recognized them as a power that could both protect and defend. Humanity's actions had sent shockwaves through the galaxy, dismantling assumptions that had once seemed unshakable. They had risen from their own restraint, forging a path defined by respect and strength. The galaxy, shaken by this display, realized the true extent of human resilience. They had mistaken diplomacy for submission, peacekeeping for weakness. Now, confronted with humanity's unapologetic assertion of power, the other species recognized that the days of underestimating humans were over. Humanity's breaking point had transformed them into a force of unwavering will, one that could no longer be manipulated or dismissed. In their response, they had redefined themselves, setting a standard that would shape the galaxy's future interactions with them. As human forces began to consolidate their gains, a new narrative emerged across the galaxy. Humanity's patience had been a gift, one they had extended time and again, but it was not limitless. The galaxy now knew that beneath their diplomatic facade lay a core of strength that would not be trifled with. Humanity's actions spoke louder than any words could have, marking a turning point that no species would forget. The cost of underestimating humanity had been steep, and the lesson was one that would echo for generations. The galaxy was irrevocably changed by humanity's response. Where humans had once been viewed with mild respect at best, they were now regarded with a mixture of awe and caution. News of their unyielding stance and the decisive actions they took spread rapidly, leaving no species unaffected. Those who had once dismissed humanity as weak were forced to reconsider, while others saw the shift as a necessary recalibration of galactic dynamics. Humanity's transformation from peacekeepers to a powerful force had redefined their role, and the galaxy was quick to adapt to this new reality. The species that had betrayed humanity were left weakened, facing the consequences of their actions in ways they hadn't anticipated. Humanity's retaliation was swift, precise, and unrelenting, showing the galaxy that they would no longer tolerate disrespect or betrayal. Territories were reclaimed, alliances reevaluated, and new treaties established under terms that reflected humanity's unwavering resolve. For humanity, this was not just a series of retaliations, It was a reclamation of their dignity and an assertion of their rightful place among the stars. They had redefined what it meant to be allies, setting a precedent that no one would easily forget. As humanity solidified their place in the galaxy's political landscape, the effects rippled outward. Former allies, recognizing humanity's newfound strength, began to approach them with renewed respect and caution. Diplomatic meetings took on a different tone, with other species fully aware that humanity would no longer bear the weight of galactic unity alone. They had proven they were capable of peace, but they had also proven they would not be exploited or dismissed. Humanity's leaders made it clear that any future alliances would be built on mutual respect, and that betrayal would no longer be met with forgiveness. The galaxy watched as humanity established a new order. They reasserted control over trade routes, reinforced their territories, and implemented security measures that left little room for outside interference. The systems that had once taken humanity's patience for granted now understood that they would need to tread carefully. Each step humanity took was a reminder that they were no longer the galaxy's silent mediators but an active, formidable presence. Their power was no longer hidden behind diplomacy. It was visible in their defenses, their alliances, and their uncompromising stance on respect. Humanity's actions reshaped alliances throughout the galaxy. Species that had once ignored human interests found themselves isolated, while those who showed genuine respect were welcomed into stronger, more secure partnerships. Humanity's willingness to protect its allies remained unchanged, but the conditions had evolved. Allies now understood that loyalty was a two-way commitment, and humanity's new approach to alliances was based on equality and reciprocity. They were no longer the galaxy's caretakers. They were respected equals who demanded the same consideration they offered. The shift in humanity's stance had a profound impact on the younger generations as well. For many humans, this period became a defining chapter, a reminder that peace was not the absence of strength but its responsible application. Schools, academies, and public institutions taught the lessons learned from the betrayal and the subsequent reclamation of respect. Humanity's youth grew up with a renewed pride in their species, understanding that their compassion was not weakness, but a choice, one they would extend only to those who deserved it. This generational shift ensured that humanity's future would remain vigilant, tempered by wisdom but fortified by the lessons of the past. Galactic councils and forums adapted to humanity's new presence with a level of caution that had been absent before. Decisions affecting human territories or interests were now approached with serious consideration, as other species recognized that humanity would no longer be taken for granted. They had shown that while they valued unity, it would not come at the cost of their dignity or security. Humanity's influence in intergalactic politics grew, not only through their alliances but through the example they had set. Other species, inspired by humanity's stance, began adopting similar principles of respect and reciprocity, strengthening the bonds between civilizations. In the years that followed, humanity's relationships with other species transformed. The lessons learned from their breaking point reverberated across galaxies, reshaping diplomatic policies and cultural attitudes. Humanity's actions had raised the bar for what it meant to be an ally, establishing a standard of respect that other species could not ignore. Those who once saw humans as mere peacekeepers now viewed them as a formidable force, not because of their military might alone but because of their unwavering commitment to self-respect and honor. They had shown that strength and compassion could coexist, and that true peace required mutual regard. The betrayal and humanity's response became a part of galactic history, studied and referenced as a turning point in interstellar relations. Humanity's journey from patient diplomats to respected equals was a story that resonated with other species, who saw in it a testament to resilience, strength, and integrity. In the end, humanity's breaking point had not fractured the galaxy but had forged a new path forward, one where respect was the cornerstone of all alliances. Their journey served as a reminder that peace, when paired with strength, was not only achievable but sustainable. As humanity looked toward the future, they did so with a renewed sense of purpose and unity. They had learned that their patience had limits, but within those limits lay a powerful foundation for growth and resilience. No longer would they bear the burden of peace alone, nor would they allow themselves to be underestimated. Humanity had redefined its place in the galaxy, not by abandoning their values, but by reinforcing them with the strength to defend them. They would continue to stand for unity, but now, the galaxy knew that humanity's respect was something to be earned, not assumed.